I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week's dissection is brought to you by Maria Menounos' new book, The Every Girl's Guide to Diet and Fitness. Check that out. Today we'll be dissecting Maleficent, the latest retelling of the, well, it's a fairy tale saga from, what is it, Cinderella?
Sleeping Beauty.
I know, I was just kidding. But thank you very much. We have a full panel, as you can see. Why don't everybody introduce themselves, starting over here with Marisa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marisa Serafini.
I'm Chloe West.
I'm Sara Stretton.
Hey, movie fans, Demetri Panos.
And there we are. And Phil, you'll be chiming in from time to time, won't you? He's in the booth with us.
Yeah.
Well, not as you didn't
That
see
was
the movie.
getting a no.
All right, so let's get our first thoughts in. What do we think of the movie? Was it magnificent? Was it, should it have stayed in the can? What do we think?
I think visually it was stunning. It had a lot going for it. Visual effects, supervising, the art direction was really well done. I found a lot of different references to previous movies that I could take from this film, like How to Train Your Dragon, Lord of the Rings, and definitely Once Upon a Time.
I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was great. I'm glad they told this story, and I think it had a great message at the end, which I think all Disney movies should. And I think in one of the last films that was very popular, Frozen, did not have a good message, actually. So I was like happy to see that it was female empowering and it was giving a good message about true love and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I definitely thought the retelling, how they shaped Maleficent's story, her background, all that was fascinating, and I thought that they did pick a very good direction for her and her character build-up. I also think it was beautiful. I do have a little bit of nitpicky things that I'll get into, but I'm glad I saw it.
Dimitri.
I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. The marketing actually sort of kind of hooked me in. And as far as this reimagining, retelling, I think it's the best of the most recent crop. Like, it was far better than Snow White and the Huntsman.
Absolutely.
I liked it better than even The Powerful Oz, Mirror, Mirror. All of these fantasy retellings, I think this one's probably the best. Props to Angelina Jolie. I just could not take my eyes off of her, whether she was front and center, behind a tree, behind a veil. I thought she was amazing. She had this amazing presence. I liked the storytelling. I liked this different side of it. Again, like Sarah, there were a few things story-wise that were, I don't know, we'll talk about nitpicky, but it didn't hinder my enjoyment of this movie from beginning to end. And it looked beautiful. We saw it in 3D, large screen, and it was gorgeous to look at as well. So, and I'm a big fan of Elle Fanning. I have to say that. Ever since Super 8, I try to see whatever this girl's in, and she was really good. Great presence.
Well, I can only echo what everybody said. I thought it was visually beautiful. I had a lot of fun watching it. I love the retelling. I'm sure I have the nitpicky things as well. So I guess, well, why don't we get into those? Let's talk about the story right away. So obviously it's the retelling, the reimagining, as you mentioned earlier, Dimitri. What parts of it did you like? What parts of it did you not like in terms of a story point?
I think for me, just the overall twist that they gave her, that they started with this kind of fallen apart love story that she had, and that she really was this broken person who was found love again through Aurora. I liked that angle. I liked that they could simultaneously sneak in things like the iconic dragon and King Stefan and the fairies, and they did connect the dots well enough for me to believe it. Like, for instance, that they had, I'm going to call them the original Sleeping Beauty names because those are the ones that stick in my head, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. I know they're renamed in this film, but those are just, they're so ingrained from childhood that that's what I had attached them to. But that they brought them to, like, the christening of the baby, and they tied in that it was for, a semblance of peace. in this story, like little things like that really made sense to me, and I liked that they drew upon that, or that they drew upon King Stefan and Prince Philip, and that they followed along the same road but with completely different motivations.
I liked it because Linda Woolverton, who's obviously penned Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, I mean, she has a great resume attached to her. I liked how she kind of justified why Maleficent was the way she is, because with the original Sleeping Beauty, you just start off right with the christening scene. That's a humongous plot point for the whole film, and then when you start with this one, you get the backstory of Maleficent, why she is the way she is, and the whole, you know, cursing of a child, who would do that, but knowing her motivation behind it kind of explains why, not really justifies it, but explains why she was on that dark path. And I always like how people find inspirations to an already iconic story. I mean, say Shakespeare in Love, for example, that was a fun retelling of William Shakespeare finding how, and being inspired how he wrote Romeo and Juliet. And, you know, just fun stories that they can really play with and have people who were fans of the original think of the original in a different way. And I think that was really well done.
What I really liked is that they took the idea that Maleficent came in and said they really thought of the curse as the whole. I think that's how they sort of created the whole plot, is they looked at the curse that Maleficent gave Sleeping Beauty, and it's that only true loves kiss. So then they sort of, I think, work backwards in the idea that, okay, why would she make a curse like that? And that's how they started with her childhood and meeting, you know, the king and King Stefan and his story and how he kissed her, and it was true love's kiss, or that's what she believed as this, like, beautiful, innocent fairy, and she had so much love, and they sort of began her story with just all this love and wonderment, and finally finding true love's kiss, and that was like the big story point in the beginning, and how it didn't exist for her because then true love's kiss betrayed her. So then she used that to curse Sleeping Beauty, which I think was just a really great way to mold the whole storyline, because that's sort of the only part of Sleeping Beauty I think anyone remembers besides the three little fairies and her pricking her finger is, oh, she's sleeping and true love's kiss is gonna wake her up. Because other than that, Sleeping Beauty is a little dry, I think. And so it was just very cool that they worked backwards in that way, and then they mirrored Aurora to Maleficent, and then that's how Maleficent really grew to love her, was seeing her wonderment and her love the way Maleficent had when she was younger, and tying the two in together like that. And I think it was great because all of Maleficent's love and wonderment turned to hate, you know, after she found out, after her wings were taken from her. And I just thought that was such an interesting and smart way to retell a story.
And also to go backwards, Linda mentioned during her research, she realized that Maleficent is actually a fairy. But during the whole christening scene in the original movie, she realized that Maleficent didn't have wings. Where did they go? So she worked backwards in that way and gave her a story based on her fairies and having wings, and then being taken away, being grounded. And she worked from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and I love that because it was titled Maleficent, she was the hero for you. You were always on her side. They found a way for you to always, no matter how evil or mean or, you know, cursing a baby, putting a spell on a baby, how can we still be on her side? But I love when the character's name, if it's the title of a movie, I want to be on their side the whole time. Unless it's really brilliantly written where you trick me, but it's a Disney movie. So I have to be on her side. And that's what I love about it, is everything was explained and everything was set up properly and just delivered. And it was just all around, I think, really well done.
Well, I was not on her side.
No, I mean, well, you know, it's interesting because one thing that hasn't been said is Maleficent in the canon of Disney movies, the character is literally one of the most evil. Like, she's a high-ranking. I would say it's her and the evil queen from Snow White are two of the. I think Ursula's on that list, but Maleficent is tops. Like, she's pretty evil in Sleeping Beauty, and you know, gets her comeuppance, you know, pretty well. Gives you something to root for at the end. I think what's great about this and this wicked ish kind of retelling is they give her motivation.
Yeah.
There's a motivation that's given, and we see a backstory. And it only works because Linda Wolverton, she's even quoted as saying, is that how do you side with such a evil villain?
Yeah.
And you have to make something big. You have to do something huge so that you can sympathize with her. And that huge thing in like today's, she was basically date raped, is basically what it was. She was drugged.
There's a lot of people who've been saying this.
And she was drugged. Her wings were clipped. She was like, her main power was taken away from her. And, you know, from a guy. She fell asleep. She wakes up not knowing where she is. She wasn't where she started on that. And so you instantly like, wow, that sucks. And you understand the anger and where that comes from. And again, I think the way that Angelina Jolie played it was, she could have chewed up the scenery. She could have like, you know, been like Al Pacino in like Devil's Advocate. I think that's but she didn't. She really played it sort of kind of straight. She used facial expressions. Of course, her makeup was just stunning, and she played it. She was like, it was like a command performance everywhere she went. Like I said earlier, I couldn't take my eyes off her. I wanted to see her expression to something, and she was from angry to see her soften up was amazing to me. And you actually put that character into an arc. And to your point about True Love, I also loved how it was a twist on that, how it wasn't necessarily, and I sort of saw that coming when Sleeping Beauty, when they get the prince in there, and I'm like going, True Love isn't going to be from his kiss. It's going to be from going to be from her grandmother, or you know, her godmother's kiss there. It's going to be from Maleficent, because that she grew into True Love. Amazing storytelling as far as that goes to me. And where my nitpicks go are, you know, we talked about the 3 fairies. My thing is, like, in the middle of the movie, they just disappeared. Like, where the hell did they go? Like, aren't they keeping tabs? Like, don't they know she's going into the woods and speaking with the evil?
Yeah, which is interesting because in the original Sleeping Beauty, the fairies are there throughout the whole movie, from beginning to end. They're literally the ones that deliver Aurora back to the castle and, like, follow Maleficent and Aurora during the whole spindle scene.
But
so
I mean,
like, they're constantly present in that film.
Yeah, but this story obviously is Maleficent, so you have to follow her storyline, and so that's
I was just like, if they're supposed to guard her,
but
they had no idea.
But look, they were bumbling from the beginning, so they knew they weren't going to be any good at it.
Their characters were set up though,
I guess,
as
but
like
they just disappeared.
I agree,
like, they just disappeared, and then I was like, wait, what the hell?
But you can't.
happened?
But you have to have them that horrible in order for Maleficent to spend that much time with Aurora and grow to love her. You just have to if you're going to tell the story, because otherwise they're always going to be there.
And also, I think it's how they built the people and who's the protagonist, who's the antagonist, and we obviously made the most known villain, Maleficent, the protagonist, but the antagonists are the humans, which all of us, being human, we'd think that they were the good guys, but actually they're the bad people in this film, which I thought was a nice twist.
Specifically the men.
Specifically,
I would not say just specifically the men. I think the fairies are portrayed, or the 3 good fairies are portrayed pretty poorly. Like, they are so happy to get rid of Aurora.
Yeah.
Well, they lost the best years of their lives. Come on.
But they're not portrayed well. Like, they don't really give them any redeeming qualities. So
they're bumbling.
For me, I agree that Angelina Jolie had a screen-stealing performance. She did amazing because she had a true arc, and there was like nuances in her acting, and there was just like tiny changes. Where it missed for me is I don't think they gave that opportunity to a lot of the other characters to have a very big change. Like, if you just look at Elle Fanning as Aurora, half the movie is literally just her smiling, laughing, and turning in circles.
Because
Sleeping
that's the
Beauty.
original movie.
What does she do? Yeah, what's the Aurora's character anyways? It's her sleeping.
Okay.
To her point though, I mean, when she sees the wings and she realizes what that means, I mean, you didn't even get to see her realize, oh my God, my father did this?
Yeah,
He's
there
the
was
one
no-
that. You didn't even get to see any of that. Would have been nice to see because you could have seen Aurora's growth. You could have
You
seen
also
her
didn't see
understanding.
her reaction to her father like dying. Like there was.
Yeah, you didn't
Wait,
get
I
to see a
don't.
lot
I
of
don't.
that.
She didn't know her father.
yeah,
She really
it
like,
wasn't her
and that's
father.
why like.
But here's
again,
the thing: she knew him enough to embrace him like crazy when she came back to him. She had an idea of who he was, clearly, because she was so happy to see him. But the breaking of that shell of understanding would have been interesting to see on her face
And
too.
what I'm saying is also, if you're talking about what opportunity they gave Angelina Jolie as Maleficent, that's completely different than the character in the original movie. So they had the chance to expand all the characters. And to me, I almost like the character of Aurora, Sleeping Beauty, in the original or in the Disney cartoon versus this one. Because I walked away liking her and thinking she was a pretty princess. And this one I was like, wow, it's all it is laughter and giggles and give me some substance.
No, but what I think is fine with her not really caring about her father's death is that it's not that they set it up that she knew she was a princess. If they would have set it up where she was constantly, imagining as a child, like, oh, I'm going to be living in the castle and I'm going to finally, when I turn 16, I'm going to meet my mom and dad. She didn't. They didn't set it up like that. So it was fine for me because it didn't leave any gaps. Like her dream was to leave her aunts to be with the fairies. That's the way they set it up. So when she goes there and she embraces her dad, because the character of Aurora is embracing the deer that comes to her, learning about everything new. She is excited. So of course she's going to be excited that this is her father. And they did show her being upset with Maleficent when she found out that she did that to her. They answered that question. So she goes to the castle. She escapes. She does, she is being a 16-year-old girl. And I love that they cast Elle Fanning as 16 and had her play young and had Prince Philip be young. I thought that was so smart. And they have her embrace him, and he shuts her away in a room. He gets mad at her. So you know what? Why would she care?
Yeah, he was. I mean, again, I think that moment that you just brought up was, to me, that was a pivotal thing. Like, this is a guy that hasn't seen his daughter in 16 years, and he didn't even know how to hug her, and he felt uncomfortable, and then he locks her up away. I mean, she came home, a day early, I believe, and he was more upset that she came home a day early. And I don't think necessarily that it was.
First of all, that's because he's crazy, and
Absolutely.
secondly, he's doing everything he can to try to prevent her slumber.
I think he was doing it. I think it was more against Maleficent than it was for his daughter.
Well,
I don't think he really. I think he was more obsessed with his vengeance on Maleficent than getting, because he knew that Maleficent would come back in one way, shape, or form, and he was prepping for that. He wasn't prepping for his daughter. He could have cared less.
Yeah,
is
because-
what
I'm not saying he cared about it. I'm saying he was trying to prevent the whole thing from her coming back, from his daughter ending up in the slum. He was trying to prevent the whole curse. That's what I'm
because
saying. He was
in the
obsessed.
original movie, I'm gonna reference the original movie a lot.
No, but that's
because,
perfect.
But King Stefan, he was preparing a whole celebration for Aurora's return, and then in this film, it was obviously different. And the way to probably isolate Aurora to get her to the spindle was to shut her away in a room. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
What for me was, I think, King Stefan, I think it was his paranoia. I don't think he was ever trying to protect Aurora, because obviously he didn't love the queen. They set it up that there was no love there. Obviously he thought she was beautiful, because when Aurora came back, the one thing he says to her is, you look just like your mother. Yep. So yes, you are my daughter. But it was really his paranoia and his fear of Maleficent coming back and making sure he's going to protect himself. Because if he really cared about Aurora, he would have been the one watching over her.
Yeah.
He would be the one going and checking on her. And so they set it up that he didn't. They set it up for his paranoia, for 16 years of paranoia, and to shut her away so that he can still win.
Yeah,
He needs to win.
And I will contend, I do think Stefan as a child did love Maleficent. I think, because there is even a point made. I really enjoyed the overvoice in this too, where sometimes that can get in the way of a story. But I think it set it up fine, because it even said at some point, and as time goes by, things change. And obviously we saw this change in Stefan as he became a man. His ambition wasn't to find true love. His ambition was to rule, and he would do whatever it took to do that, including taking the virtue of this fairy. And you know, and then he comes in, and he's into power, and then he becomes a mad king.
Yeah.
You know, pretty much, and you know, he becomes more so even the villain than Maleficent becomes. And and again, I'll just go back. I really did love how, you know, how it slowly happened for Maleficent. How the warm and fuzzies, you know, finally, you know, took her over, and that Maleficent herself. And again, I credit Angelina Jolie, because you can see the moment when she has true love for this child.
Beastie.
Oh, Beastie was, you know, I love that she called her Beastie. And even when she
said,
was
I hate you.
I hate you. Yeah.
The best line in the entire movie.
And I just, like, to me, that's what made this movie work. And I didn't expect it. I really did expect, like, another Snow White and the Huntsman kind of a tale. And this one, to me, just from an emotional standpoint, I thought it had its heft for the movie that it is, you know. And I think little girls would love it. I, as an adult male,
because I agree with you. I thought the Maleficent storyline, but I also really agree with Sarah. I just think there was missed opportunities with Aurora, and I did not like at all the Stefan story. It's like, it just, to me, it was
about greed. I think it was fine.
Yeah,
he was greedy, and greed took him
I
over.
don't think it was great.
One of the holes for the humanity specter was they gave a lot of the fairies kind of somewhat of a motivation, like a center. Even the little fairies, like where their flightiness and everything was coming from, they felt like they had a center of who they were. I think for in general humanity, everything was kind of thrown away in like one line. Like, the original king was greedy and wanted power. Stefan was ambitious, and kind of they were just summed up by an adjective and like told to, like, okay, be the mad king. And I agree that it worked for the story, and that it helps Maleficent's character, and it did shape this new retelling. But to me, it wasn't grounded enough, or maybe he fell into madness too quickly, unlike Maleficent, who did grow into love slowly.
But the movie's called Maleficent, so that's why we follow her story. And also,
but that doesn't mean you can't have a good story for your villain. The stronger your villain is, the better your protagonist.
I think he had a fine story.
And what we're disagreeing is we don't agree. We think it was kind of lackluster in one note, and it could have been much more fleshed out and much more interesting.
I think his story was that he was greedy and he went mad, and the greed led him to be mad. And they don't need more than one line, because the brilliance of this movie as well is it wasn't long. I didn't have to sit through a 3-hour movie.
It was
great.
Absolutely.
It was quick. They told the story. All you need is one line sometimes, and that's so many one-liners in this movie were such key plot points. You know, the fairies being there and being like, we're here to give gifts of peace. Boom, they explained why they're there in the first place, because they explained at the beginning that the worlds were apart. You know, him saying, I'm gonna live in that castle one day. Boom, his whole storyline was told in one line. Right. That's all I needed. And that's why it was so great, because then we could really focus on the title character. And it really gave the title character this beautiful way to tell her story. And the antagonist, but it's not like you didn't believe he was evil. He was evil. And think about Ursula. They don't really explain Hades, you know, they don't really explain him.
Well, they explain what happens, but
like, the whole reason for a lot of these retellings is to give them more depth and to not make them so they're evil for no reason. And that's what we all said our problem with Maleficent was in the cartoon version, is that she had no motivation. And for me, they gave stuff a motivation, but it wasn't really truly, in my opinion, built up. He just kind of plummeted into crazy. And you're right, it supported Maleficent's storyline. And on that character, if she's the title character, it works. But I think you could have given it more.
I don't think the movie was set up for her. I don't think, from beginning to end, I don't think the movie was set up for Maleficent to go after the villain, so to speak. It was to recapture true love.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, again, when you talk about the villain, like, it's not... This could be a shitty analogy, and I apologize, but it's not like it's a James Bond or a John McClane where he's got to go after the villain because this villain is evil, and we got to stop to what he's doing. Maleficent, like, he was just like, he was on the road, he was that obstacle, but her true arc didn't come necessarily from the villain. Her true arc came from within.
All I'm saying is that
the villain was as strong as needed. Like,
it was serviceable, but that's it. I'm just saying it would have been a strong. For me, it would have been a much stronger film if that had been fleshed out. That's
Well, I don't understand how they would have been able to do that though.
by good writing.
No, but like what could he have
See,
done?
there's a one-liner that just explained everything.
But like, what could they have done to his character that would have made it something that you were like, yeah, that was great? Because for me, her story, like, she sets up the wall of thorns, and that's all she has to do.
I think for
She
me,
doesn't
what
need
was
to do
missing from
anything
him was a
else.
lot of more relationship. I think that a lot of his scenes were spent alone, and with him yelling at characters that didn't matter. We didn't really see a lot of him with Aurora. We didn't really see a ton of like conversation with him with Maleficent once he was going mad. Like, for me,
Because then he
you
wouldn't
were
have been
just
able
seeing
to
as
go
his-
mad.
I know, but you were just seeing him as an isolated character who was mad. Every scene, mad, like.
That's right. It was one
Well,
note.
it
was
wasn't
like,
every
It was
scene,
not
though.
one
No,
note, though.
no,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sorry.
it was
His
for you.
crazy
For me, it
grew.
was one.
But
note,
his
yeah,
crazy
no, his
grew.
crazy grew.
so
Like, I think
I
that
don't care. You could say that, and I'm not disagreeing. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is you're welcome to that opinion, but I just don't share it. I thought it
Yeah.
was one note. He bored the crap out of me. I'm going, please do something with this character.
Yeah, I mean, I think that from him setting up, okay, the way, and again, this is the way I interpreted it. You know, when he set out, as a kid, he fell in love with Maleficent. He had this very special friend in the forest. So much so that it was even made a point that he took off the steel ring because they shook hands.
Iron.
He burned iron. Thank you. He took it off,
We'll get
threw it
those.
away, and I thought that was a very nice moment. And I do think that when they kissed, I think at that point in time, I think it was a true love's kiss. And for both of those characters, but as the movie says, they changed. When Stefan went to go seek Maleficent for her wings, yes, it was definitely for pride, it was definitely for ambition. But I also got the sense that he knew what he was doing was wrong. Like that it wasn't like he wasn't like
yeah.
the he. And I think that was part of his madness. I think he was ashamed. I think that and even when he sees her, I think he just couldn't cope as a king, as an adult. He knew that he did something wrong, and he was so pig-headed that he put himself in that corner where he never said, "I'm sorry." He never had that warmth in him to say that, and then he just became mad with he had to be a king. He had this daughter that he shipped away. He became obsessed with this curse, and I'll never have it happen again. And all of this stemmed from various emotions, not just one. And again, I agree. He didn't have an arc, obviously, because he never even said to his daughter, like, happy birthday, or I love you, or there was never an arc for the villain. And I agree to that point. But I think he was as strong as he could have been for 90 minutes.
Or
that
that
we
needed
had.
him to be.
I think it was that because there was that moment where he decided, or he thought he was going to kill Maleficent when they were younger, but he let her live and just took the wings to get on the throne. And I thought they could have taken that one moment. Like, he does have humanity in him, but yet they never played off of that for the rest of the movie. Like, he could have had redeeming moments at the end. He could have apologized or, like, done anything to make redeem himself, but he didn't.
No.
And they built it up that he was kind of a good person, but in the end he was power driven, and we didn't like him.
And he wasn't even a good king.
Even though they had an opportunity for him to redeem himself.
Yeah.
I think the reason why they didn't have him redeem himself was because the whole point of the retelling is to have Maleficent not be the evil character. So if he would have redeemed himself when she killed him, you would have felt bad. You know, there would have been like, oh, well, now she's like, he said sorry. So I think by having him not do that, by having him be that evil, and then Aurora becoming queen of both lands, otherwise she couldn't have been queen.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring up like one other point. Another reason why I really liked it too is because for me, I felt that it went down paths. I thought that it didn't take the obvious route, and a lot of it didn't take that. Yeah, it didn't take the obvious forest path. When we first met the prince, the young prince, I was thinking, okay, she just made her creed. She wants to stay with the fairies. Oh, here comes this handsome young man. Oh my God, I'm gonna fall in love with him. And it could have gone down the route that he takes her away, and then Maleficent gets pissed even more because she's losing this. But it didn't go that way. She didn't. you could tell there was an attraction, and I appreciated that kind of, like, it could have gone an obvious route, but they chose to be a little bit more courageous and stay their course from not making this a princess prince story,
Yes.
the typical Disney princess prince story. And they sort of kind of just turned it around, and love can come in many other forms.
Well,
and I think that's what Lisa Wolverton,
Linda.
she really nailed that love comes in all shapes or forms, whether it's from a godmother, whether it's from your mom.
Well, that's been kind of a
like
path that Disney's been taking lately. I don't know if it was because of all the years of heat of True Love, and then they kind of came out with Brave, and they came out with Frozen, and now they're coming out with this, with more family love being the thing that ties us all together. And that I did appreciate. I really did like, yes, I kind of predicted that Maleficent was going to be the true love's kiss.
Yeah.
But I did like it. I thought that it was justified, that they didn't just make it the guy she barely knew in the forest. That was a good point. Also, bringing up the tie-in line at the end that she's both simultaneously hero and villain, I thought was also good, that there's it's just perspective. I think they could have used that to tie in some good points about King Stefan and made that more relatable and more across the board instead of just focused on her. On top of that, what I found funny was, did anyone else feel like King Stefan's death was very reminiscent of Gaston in Beauty and the Beast?
Oh yes,
falling
absolutely.
off the
Yes,
Off the
falling
roof.
off
Oh, yeah.
after
Or
she's,
being
and I
dead.
was like, wait, who wrote this again?
yeah.
Yes. But I mean, I think that how they did proceed with his death was good
but the
route.
other thing too is, if you are looking at hero and villain, your hero who becomes the villain, and it was said at the beginning of the movie as well. I'm almost sure in overvoice, what to watch. Things aren't exactly what they can seem. But the other thing is too, it shows that a character can change, and where your villain is not going to change. Like in the original Sleeping Beauty, you never think that Maleficent is going to change at all.
No.
I mean, she's just evil. So in this one, we have the king, who changed actually from being young and having that sense of adventure in his heart and wanting to, like, seeing this magnificent world of fairies, and he changed to becoming a hardened adult, where we had Maleficent, who grew as a fairy, who had this wonderful world. Something so horrible happened to her, it just changed her entire perspective on life. But then she finally gets that life back, where the king, he never was able to get that life back. Never. He was never able to go back to that childhood and find that warmth in his heart the way he used to. He was at a point where he would never have thrown off that ring. In fact, he did the exact opposite. He covered himself up in iron, so as, Maleficent couldn't come near him. So I found those things, again, for a movie that's a fairy tale. I find that thematically, it had way more going for it than just your typical, like a Snow White and the Huntsman, which didn't have much.
One of my favorite components that they added to this film, and was inspired obviously from the is the crow.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I thought that the reinterpretation of that, because that is one of Maleficent's only kind of seeming
Ally.
Yeah.
relationships in the beginning, and they took that and really transformed it and made it a tie-in for, like, the dragon, made it a tie-in for her wings.
Right.
Everything that they added for that character, and I thought he just did a very good job with
He
the
was
whole
good,
He
and-
seemed to have this heart and these quippy little
Right.
lines.
But he
and
wasn't too cheesy, which is
No.
what I loved.
Yeah.
There were so many chances. Like, he had, like, the one funny line of, don't make me a dog. That was, like, the only time they let him be sort of cheesy and give you that cheap laugh.
Yeah.
But that kind of character always has the cheap laughs. And I
Sure.
was so happy that they really didn't let him. And he was the one who, he would say certain things to Maleficent. But he wasn't the turning point for Maleficent either, which I think is also a cheap way to go about it. It was really Aurora. We really had to watch Maleficent, change because of Aurora, not because somebody's making her feel bad.
And again, sorry.
I also felt like he was kind of the voice of reason for Maleficent too, when she was questioning everything, and especially there was the scene where Aurora almost fell off the edge of the cliff, and he was questioning, like, you should probably save her.
Right.
And so he was always there to help Maleficent through her troubles too, and I thought that was a nice balance. And then when it came to the end where he turned into the dragon, you actually felt for the dragon and not be like, oh, kill it.
Right.
You felt for it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I
And
thought they
Don't kill the dragon.
I thought they did a great job turning like all these creatures like dragon, crow, like animals that had negative connotations into something that we were rooting for.
And he actually took care of Aurora from baby to, and I like those scenes. I also like that they didn't have any kind of relation. Like, it could have maybe gone down the route with Aurora falling in love with them, but they didn't do that at all. They stayed away. But instead, he was to a point as much as a protector as Maleficent became towards the end, but from the beginning he would rock her cradle. He overlooked, and again, you're right. They gave that character, and the guy who played him was really good too. And again, going back to your point, brevity was so key. To do it in 90 minutes, which is basically the average runtime of their fairy tale princess, animated movies. They're about
actually,
85
the Sleeping
to 90
Beauty
minutes.
film was 75 minutes.
Yeah.
So an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, and today, if you have a 75-minute movie, they got to put a short on top of it because it's too short. But yeah, I mean, it's I just, again, talking about this the way we are is actually making me even appreciate it more.
Yeah.
And again, there are foibles. There's no argument there. But
Well, actually, yeah, we've been having a good argument about that.
well. Again, one line just says it all. But yeah, no, I'm just saying, I agree that there are foibles. I agree that this isn't a perfect movie. It's not but it was far better than I could have expected it to be.
One thing I want to rewatch this movie for is specifically her wings. Because I feel like I normally notice like little things, maybe because we do these so often that I'm like looking for them. I'm like, it's like I Spy. What can I find ahead of time? But I had no idea that they were going to
Come back to life.
I don't know, reanimate something in the end scene. That they were going to be going crazy in that cage. That was such a shocker to me that I wonder if it's hinted at earlier in the movie, because I liked it because I liked that she got her wings back and could fly again. I was like, oh yay, the world's gonna be happy. But I was like, totally not expecting it. So that's one reason I have to go back. I'm hoping that there's some like feather.
Yeah, I didn't see any when Stefan brought him back to the king. I didn't see any life in those.
No.
movies.
Yeah.
Because when we saw that Stefan had it as his prized possession, I immediately knew. I was like, well, she's gonna get them back because they're still there. Because it was his thing to prove that this is what I did to get onto the throne. And then knowing that they still existed, I was like, she's going to eventually get her wings back. And also just seeing from the promotion, the billboards, like on the street, I realized they accentuated the wings so much. I'm like, why is that? We don't really think of Maleficent's character with wings. And
Absolutely.
having this whole movie based around like the importance of the wings, I was like, she's eventually going to get them back. So I knew that was going to happen.
It also made it make a little more sense why he was like at that one point when he was having a conversation with the wings and he gets interrupted by like a guard and you're like, oh, this person's insane. But I was like, wait, what if the wings were actually responding to him?
Yeah.
I was like,
That would make him
Is mine
insane.
actually?
like actually.
In semaphores or something? How are they communicating?
I don't know,
Okay.
waving them off.
What did you think of
Wait once for a yes and twice for no.
Diavol? What did you think? Isn't that his name? What did you think of?
Oh, I thought it was
It's
a great,
supposed to sound like devil.
great use
so
of
I
that.
keep-
Yeah, it was great use of it, and I love that it was utilized in different animals and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the original crow in the animated version was, I believe, named Diablo. Which means
Just
devil. So they kind of
Yeah.
continued that. Although making some changes. I mean, it's a 75-minute movie, as Marissa said.
Yeah.
So I memorized quite a bit of it. I watched that movie a lot.
I don't think I
very
ever
simple
saw
film.
it. Sorry, I'm gonna be on the other end of that spectrum.
There's lots of changes.
Never saw it.
Name changes.
Never saw Sleeping Beauty?
Character
No.
name
Never
changes.
saw it.
Line changes.
See,
the
I just
curse is
rewatched
actually
that
changed
movie.
in this movie compared to the original. They've definitely manufactured it to fit this arc in a way because Maleficent isn't the actual. I might be mistaken. I need to rewatch, but I'm 90% sure she's not the one who says that Sleeping Beauty can be reawoken.
No,
by
it's
True
not.
Love's Fist.
It's
an
the
over
fairy.
voice of the fairy.
The fairy, because when at the beginning in that movie, when the fairies are giving the gifts, and then Maleficent interrupts the third one, and then she puts the curse on, and then the third one gave that loophole as a gift. Be like, we can break this curse that just happened with True Love's Kiss.
Yeah.
I think
So it was
that's
the
a
fairies.
Disney adding to the story, because what's very cool about the whole Sleeping Beauty story in general is the story of how it was created. There's this amazing chateau in France that anyone can visit, by the way, if you are a huge fan. And the writers were hanging out at their friend's chateau, and he slept over at the chateau, and then one night, and then woke up and wrote Sleeping Beauty, because he was like, oh, I'm gonna write it about the chateau, about the story we were talking about over dinner. And you can go to the chateau, and they've made a wing of it because people still live there. Yes, they've made a wing of the chateau, like for tourists, where you can like see the spindle, and they have a Maleficent character standing next to the spindle. But I think it is just a very simple, silly kind of tale, like after dinner tale that blew up into a fairy tale, and Disney grabbed a hold of it. And I think it was a Disney thing to make it True Love's Kiss.
Sure.
Disney's True Love. So it was cool the way that
They reworked it for this.
Disney reworked their own sort of reworking. And that I also liked that she's in the middle of a spell, and you see her change her mind in the middle of her being so angry. I thought that was so cool.
What was this? What's this? What's
She's
this?
talking about Angelina Jolie's line right before she adds this component of True Love's Kiss, is because Stefan goes down and is like begging her, and she's talking about how you see her mind go, hold up, new idea. There's a light bulb moment. Well, at least that's how
She gives the loophole.
Yeah, it's a little soft moment during the hardest part, which is what was so great about this film, was when she was hard, she still had a soft moment. You know, she still was drawing you in, and when she was super soft, she still called her beastly or said,
Beastie.
I hate you, beastie, and just all these little things that were just so great. So many layers attached to her.
Yeah, I agree. And again, you know, the animated Sleeping Beauty, you know, I'm a big fan of the Disney animation. And again, their hand-drawn animation, I think, is, even to this day, just so hard to beat. From Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to Bambi to Sleeping Beauty, there is something to be said about the artistry that is done in those movies.
And Sleeping Beauty in particular, the style that they used for that animated film was incredible, so that they lived up to another visual spectacle for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it is so endeared. It is so popular, and so many little girls are brought up on it and such, that, you know, if you're going to make, it's tough. I mean, you're going to basically make a movie from who's essentially the really badass villain. How do you do that? And I think it was, I don't know if they were inspired by things like Wicked or something, where you take, you know, the evil witch of the West and you give her a whole backstory. I don't know, but I mean, I was thinking about that, like, and I think for putting it in today, the guy who directed it, first-time director, but a production designer who's worked with people like, I believe, James Cameron and such.
It's that Avatar.
Yeah, and you know, he had a great eye. I think he did a really good job.
That's why it looks so good.
I mean, it looked beautiful. And again, though, when you compare it to your hand-drawn animation, it almost had that whimsy, beautiful, just way to look at it. And I thought it looked, I thought the depth in 3D, I thought it looked really good. And even when those dark scenes in the forest, I could still see. So again, I will say, once again, we are in the time of going to see 3D.
Well, I saw it 2D. It still looked fabulous.
Yeah, it's still I was just saying, as far as like, you wouldn't, if you're gonna pony up the extra cash, you won't be disappointed. It's not gonna give you a headache. It's gonna look gorgeous. And 2D, you could tell from all the marketing that there was just something there. Looked great.
I think it was interesting how they had that, you know, I mean, I only saw it in 2D, but I still thought it looked visually stunning. I liked how they separated the two worlds, the Moors and then the human world. And if you think about it, I think all the deaths, you think Moors would be, you know, coincides with all the deaths in the film, but I believe all the deaths happen in the human world, not the Moors. So I liked how they twisted that on us too.
Yeah, I mean, this all goes to it being directed by a production designer. It was beautiful. Also, there were so many references to the original animated film, set-wise, the Wall of Thorns, the castle, even like the christening scene. it felt like it was very much drawn. Like I recognized some of the costumes from the from the animated motion picture. So they did a beautiful job from her staff to Maleficent's costumes. I think that all that was done immaculately well. I think it also paired really well with their music, which was incredible. I thought. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the, I don't know how do you describe them, almost like angelic voices.
Ethereal.
Yeah,
Sure.
but then they got like
It's a great word.
yeah, they're like also twisted though to fit the dark scenes, and that really, if you listen to the soundtrack, it feels like it simultaneously flows from whimsy to dark, and it's still one complete unit.
Yeah, I think it's a great example, and we've talked about it here many times, where you get a great group of people around you. I mean, so you have this guy who's a production designer, but then you pair him up with cinematographer Dean Semler, who's been around for a while. He has some great credits to his name. And then you bring in James Newton Howard to to do your soundtrack. So again, look at his resume, and he's been around for quite some time. And a production designer who's going to have an idea and be able to guide his crew, and yet give them the opportunity to grow and not so overpower him, because he's got to direct. He's got to talk to his actors. He's got to figure out, what's going on set. So he gives them the leeway, but at least he has the eye. And when you're working with collaborative people, especially a first-time director like this, I think he did a really good job. There was an article, I think, in the Hollywood Reporter somewhere. There seems to be a lot of jobs going to first-time directors. Gareth Edwards, who talked about Godzilla. It's his first time directing something so big, and they're going, Wally Pfister. I'm not going to, defend Transcendence. However, I think they're giving a lot more opportunity. And let's face it, the bottom line is they come cheap.
They'll take the gamble there.
They'll take the gamble. Yeah.
What did you guys think of the accents in the film? From the way Angelina spoke as Maleficent with a slight, it was like a very proper American speech.
Like an inflection, yeah.
And then the king having a very Scottish, his very natural Scottish accent, and Elle having a little bit of something as Aurora. It was interesting because it didn't pull me out of the story, but I did think it helped a little bit.
I think Angelina's portrayal of her voice for Maleficent definitely reflected the original actress who played Maleficent, who voiced Maleficent in the original, because back in the 1940s, 1950s, I mean, that movie came out in 1959, the women spoke like that. They were they had great diction in their speech.
And there was a resonance.
Yes, like great diction and all that. So it really just reminded me how original Maleficent sounded like, which I think added to her character.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that's why for me, command performance may be too strong, but she commanded my attention. Every time I just couldn't, I wanted to see her looks, I wanted to see her expression, and then I wanted to hear her talk. And the way, and again, being that kind of a villain, the director could have gone a route saying, no, I want more, and she didn't. And, I felt that the scenes with the little versions of Aurora were great. And her daughter scene, to me, that scene was very endearing. And knowing who that was, it didn't take me out of the picture. In fact, I just appreciated the little girl and going up. And you could probably tell that at home, that's what the daughter says to Brad or Angelina, or up, and she picks her up. And to me, it was okay. So granted, she was hired because she was the only one not afraid of her. That's the only. She was hired because she was the only one on set that she was like, oh, mommy, and so. But I loved how the director captured the kids' wonderment of the horns, and you went around the horns, and to me, again, that was very endearing. And I was like, and you can see Maleficent breaking down slowly. Going, son of a bitch. He's doing it to me. I don't want to.
Just even picking her up. And I think it was important to have Aurora not be afraid and just wonder about everything. She seemed very much like a fairy to me.
Yeah.
which I thought was really
blessed
cool.
with happiness for every
Yeah.
day of her
Well,
life.
yeah, and when she came into the forest as the
She wasn't
16-year-old or
happy every day
15,
of her life,
no.
by the way.
No, she wasn't.
When she was 15,
So much for
she
that.
came into the forest and she goes, I know who you are. She goes, you've been watching, you're my godmother.
Yeah.
And like, that's a funny line
great.
because you're like, she goes, oh my God. She goes, you've been watching. And then when she sees the car, she goes, oh, I know you too. You've also been watching me. And it's supposed to be these fairies who, let's face it, she doesn't really, there's no love for them the way
There's no
that she
guidance
cares.
by them.
Right.
They're crazy ants.
They're
Those are
crazy ants.
Crazy ants.
Those are
Yeah.
her spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's
Exactly.
accidentally, she added a little love when she said that. Who accidentally tried to feed me spiders?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Great.
Yeah.
yeah, again,
I
you
like
know,
that
this is-
because the original that Maleficent took 16 years to find Aurora, and then in this one, like Maleficent has been following Aurora her
The
whole
whole
life.
time.
So I like that difference.
And I like the change to when I also like the scene a lot when she tried to recuse the curse or take the curse back.
Yes, that was
Like that to
great.
me was that was a really great scene. And and again, your villain makes that arc and change, and it's like puts herself in a situation that she did. She's like, shit, idiot, what do I do now? Like, how do I get out of my own mess? And I thought that was clever too. So it was a great scene.
Logically, I had problems with how do you create a curse that you can't take off?
Yeah.
But no power
So-
in this world
yeah, I know.
can
I was
undo.
like,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I had to just.
It's lasting.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
right.
It's a fairy tale.
I
Even
know.
though
That's
she's
why
not
I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah.
You just have to be like, okay.
I think it's a
Let
good
that go.
lesson of be careful what you say. Be careful what you wish for. It's one of those. It's a very Disney, like, be
Yeah.
careful what you wish for, because even when you want to take it back,
Yep.
It's been done.
yeah.
And now you have to explain yourself and fix it. Good luck.
Yeah.
I thought
made
her
your
apology
bed.
was even better. I
No
loved
lying
that
it.
apology.
Yes,
scene.
at the
I thought it was
bed.
terrific.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really good.
And she did it really well. Like, you buy her as Maleficent. Look, we got plenty of time to go towards the end of the year. She'll most likely be overlooked. And I'm not saying that this movie will be looked at for Academy mention, but for this performance in a summer movie, it's pretty hefty. It's pretty well done. She did a fantastic
What a
job.
great role for her. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
What actress wouldn't
Well,
want this?
they've said that this role couldn't be played by anyone but her.
And she
kind of.
wanted to do it.
And she wanted it so bad.
Angelina wanted it because she heard through the grapevine that they were thinking of making Maleficent, so she asked around, and then Disney called her.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I know
And
that part
she's
of
a
that,
big
she,
fan of
She was a
Maleficent.
fan. She was a fan of the movie. She also wanted a movie her kids could finally see because most of her movies aren't very kid friendly.
And she likes stories with moral ground, and also with Elle Fanning, because she said the Sleeping Beauty was one of her favorite Disney princesses, because she said that she always looked like Sleeping Beauty, and when she was a kid, the
Spent a lot of
merchandise,
time asleep.
Disney merchandise that she would get was Sleeping Beauty. So when she had the
couldn't be my
opportunity
favorite
to be
princess.
Aurora, she jumped at that chance as well.
Yeah, and again, I became a huge fan of Elle Fanning after Super 8. Watch Super 8 if you haven't, or rewatch it. But her performance as a child actress in Super 8 is fantastic, and you go, wow, she could grow up to be something. She could grow up to be a really good actress. And I think here, yes, she had that smile on her face, but I think that character was supposed to.
Oh yeah, it's what they gave her.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
kind of like
Happiness.
spin around with the butterfly.
Yeah. And yeah,
Okay.
but she talks about when she got the role, she was very nervous of meeting, Angelina Jolie, and she said, "Oh my God, the day I met her, I couldn't eat, and then I met her, and the first thing she did was hug me." And she goes, "We're gonna have a lot of fun making this movie together." And she goes, "It put me at ease, but I never stopped calling her Angelina, even though everybody else was calling her Angie." She goes, "I just felt so for a 16-year-old." Hey, it's nice. She has a little bit of respect, and she continued to call her Angelina throughout the entire movie. So, and you see both of them in interviews, and they both, like, Angelina Jolie seems to be very proud of this movie, which is great, because if she didn't, she would just do the interview, and you can sort of tell when an actor or actress is not, really pushing it. But the both of them together, I thought, like, and Elle Fanning was just she seemed happy to be in this movie, and
Yeah, and Angelina had a lot to say in her wardrobe as well, and
You're allowed to
just
say
like,
in everything.
yeah, and her character,
exec
she
producer.
Yeah.
really did take this project under her wing, and she took it seriously.
Did it
And
again under her
I-
wing. Nice.
There you go. But especially her wardrobe, and actually Anna B. Shepherd, who's done like the Pianist and other great movies. They created more than 700 costumes for this film.
Wow.
Oh, wow, that's
Over
a lot.
700, like all handmade.
What I loved about the costuming
crazy.
for
Yeah,
Maleficent was as a young girl, even though she was the only fairy that they showed in brown and in dark, she still was beautiful, and you still thought
She's more
she
of a
fit
mother
in the world.
mother fairy.
Yeah,
Mother Earth
even
kind of
as a
thing.
young one, and she still fit in. She was like the earthier one. It seemed like the more little hippie one. And then as she got older, when they talk about making beautiful filmmaking, when they zoomed in on the horns, you realize they weren't black.
Yeah.
They were textured, and there were browns and greens and blues. But from far away, of course, it looks like the picture we've always seen where she's all in black. And I thought that was really smart and beautiful, and that her crown did change. It was still part of her horns, but it was still all animal based.
Yeah, like python.
Yes, it
fish
was
and-
just so
Scales,
cool.
leather
You didn't notice
scales.
the python on there?
I'll share the link so we can put it on the site, but there's a whole link
Yeah.
that I found because in researching, there's so many things said about the fashion of it.
Yeah,
so
so much.
basically, from
her
back
outfits?
of her
talking
costuming
about
and
the-
makeup.
okay,
I mean,
And
it
the
goes from
horns
the
itself.
perfect skin. They used MAC Select cover concealer. Like there was a whole thing. Kiehl's blue astringent to prep Jolie's face for applying the prosthetic so that it would try to come off easy, because it took about 3 hours or
Still
so
out
to
of my
try to
depth.
get that stuff off. Yeah, then they even went to the red lips is now part of Mac's like fashion
Maleficent
line.
Red? Is that-
Maleficent Red.
Nice.
They've done this
It's the
whole like
Maleficent
there's a-
collection.
In the marketing, it's gone beyond billboards and trailers now.
Clearly.
Oh, yeah.
So
Wow.
now there's also makeup campaigns. We've seen them before with Hunger Games, Catching Fire did some. I mean, it's
This
it's
one
a
lends
new-
itself.
It's a new
Yeah.
target area.
My roommate works in, she represents brands, and they do this. They a whole industry is set on getting a brand attached to a film. So Mac is
Yeah.
attached to this film, and that whoever did that, kudos to you, because it's a
wearing Maleficent
huge business thing.
I'm wearing MAC red. I'm not about the Maleficent one though.
Well,
yet.
here, we'll
Maybe
catch
next
this
week.
too. So the creepy eyes. Tony D was
great.
inspired by the colors of, I didn't even know this, Labradorite stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm familiar with it.
those
colors-
contacts
Right.
are actually hand painted too.
Yeah.
They were
Wow.
custom made.
I believe that.
It's a lot of effort.
Didn't they look
Oh,
like
yeah.
they changed in certain scenes? In certain
Yes.
scenes they looked yellower, in certain scenes they were green, in certain scenes they were blue.
Yeah, and
I thought that was a cool
They had
character
that
trait
one
for a
fade
fairy.
where the only thing left was her eyes on screen.
yeah, and well, plus they made the contacts too to sort of pick up her colors. So
Yeah.
if you're changing lighting or
She's
whatever,
a fall, let's be honest.
I think I am too.
And the gel cheekbones.
Didn't you find
Yeah.
it was interesting?
Silicone
She,
gel.
costume-wise, she was always in a dress, which I thought was very cool. Except for the end, she was in a jumpsuit, and I was like, "Wait, that's
How
so Angie. That's so like Tomb Raider, and a little weird for me."
How did she get into the jumpsuit?
I was wondering that as well.
That's underneath the dress. All her
It was
clothing fell
underneath,
off.
yeah,
It was underneath
because
the
it was
dress.
very capey.
I
Everything was
wear
a cape.
leggings
long
underneath all
pants.
my dresses.
But I
Yeah.
did think that was a little bizarre to somehow lose the cape and lose the dress, and now she's in this jumpsuit.
I think if you think about it too,
She was there
it's
to
like
fight.
her shedding herself,
skin-
you know,
right.
like her bad exterior.
I think it was probably
and becoming
like,
a
this
better
is easier to
person.
wear in a harness. I don't know. But
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I was thinking, because I was like, and the skirt is gone. The skirt is gone. Where's the skirt? And I was looking for it. I was like, is it on the ground?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it just disappeared.
Yeah.
Well, the
I-
other
yeah, that's
cool
what I was thinking.
thing
Where the hell
for
did that
you-
thing go? Is it retractable?
Yeah, it just melts.
You know?
The other for you pop music people too, a lot they took inspiration from Lady Gaga's one of her
Yes,
cover
her
albums for her
prosthetics.
Born
cheeks
this way.
and Born This Way.
Yeah.
So and I just look again, whatever they did to her, she's a beautiful woman to begin with. They made a villain look very alluring, and she wore the makeup and the costume very well, and the way she walked, she was, again, I thought she was great.
And also just a little add a little bit, sorry, to
Yeah.
the horns that
Yeah.
they for her makeup and her whole wardrobe process that they made 4 different types of horns for her filming and over 20 different like sets just to film throughout the whole film. And because they were so big and bulky that they're like, we have to find an easier way to do this between scenes. And so they made the base of the horns like on a skull cap, but then the rest of it is all magnetic. Like, so
just put it on.
Yeah, so
So you can
they
take it
could
off.
easily pop it off.
Yeah.
Also,
in
if she were
between
to like
scenes.
hit
Yeah.
anything, also if she were like to hit her head on anything, the horns would come off, so it wouldn't pull her neck.
Yeah, and at the
that's
beginning,
serious.
Yeah, I think it's
And then,
it's
but they had to
terrific.
make so many because like if they
Yeah.
fell, they would shatter. So they had to have multiple pairs of these, but they were trying to be very cautious of her neck health.
yeah, and
'Cause
she
she
had
ran
one that
into a
was
lot of
very
things in the
heavy.
first 2 days.
Yeah, and there were times where she
They
like
had
where
a
they were
horn
light. She
wrangler
forgot
on
that
set.
they had them on, and she'd walk through a
Yeah.
hallway. But
Hit
And
the
they would
roo-
fall.
hit
You
the
know.
doorway.
still sound again. It still sounds like even under all this, she still appeared to have had a lot of fun making
Yeah,
this movie.
definitely.
And I think it comes across.
Yeah.
I wanted to point out one story that I read about that to me I personally identified with because I've done it and this works. So to find her laugh, like that really rich Maleficent laugh, they did this game and I've played it before, and you all lay on the ground in a circle. Have you played? It's so much fun. And you put your head on like the person next to your stomach, and then your head goes on someone else's stomach, and so basically you make this circle, everyone's head's on someone else's stomach. And you don't even have to try and start laughing.
just
Someone
happens.
starts laughing, and like it is the most fun ever, and you're just
Your head.
by the end you're like cracking up. So she did this to help find her Maleficent laugh. I was like, I've done that. I can verify that
Whose
works.
stomach was her head on?
That I don't know.
That's the part of the story I want to know. And whose head was on her stomach is also what I want to know.
Interesting.
I'll have to look for some pictures.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
But
We'll
I
have to
highly
try that.
recommend it that you guys go out there and try the laughter circle game. It's
We're gonna do it here.
Sounds like
Yeah.
sure.
But
I'll fall asleep.
just a little bit more on the wardrobe because it's so vast and they made so many costumes. King Henry, the first original king that we see, for his court, they made it more medieval looking and corals, reds, and golds, like very vibrant. And then when we got to King Stephan's time of ruling, and during his court, it was blues and grays to definitely reflect his dark exterior and personality. And then also for the fairies that we renamed, which I didn't like that.
The pixies.
But the pixies, fairies.
They were very pixie.
Not grass, which the red one, which I thought was actually pink throughout, but I guess is
I'm
still
glad they
red.
made her red and not
Yeah.
pink. I think
I
pink
just,
is
like-
too early Disney cartoon.
But in the original, the first one was red. But for her character, they were inspired by crimson daylilies and carnations and roses. And then for the blue one, Flittle, they used blue and white hydrangeas. And for Thistlewit, they used dandelions, the whole yellow and green.
These
What-
names
what-
go straight over.
Yeah, no,
Like,
what was the
Dwarf
whole
on the
reason?
Merriweather.
Does anybody have
No,
any
but they're-
research on why they changed the names? Because I don't understand.
I don't know, maybe to like evolve with the story, but the names of these were more earthly beings, more flower based.
Even though
creatures.
Flora,
yeah,
You can't get much more.
fauna,
and
earthly
Merriweather.
based than Flora.
So I
I mean,
think
and fauna.
Yeah.
And
so
I
just
think-
like
I
the
think the
details of
names-
the wardrobe was pretty fascinating.
I think the names actually reflect their character types too, because like
Yeah.
Thistlewit, like that she was very.
Which one was she?
That was the
green
the blonde with the green, and she was very much like
She was on that.
Ditz.
Yeah.
and
They
then
were all
like
ditzy.
Flintle was, but she was like flighty, and she had all the butterflies always flighty around her, and that was her. And Knotgrass, she was the one that was always trying to like work and be the worker one. And so I think character names are important, and so the fact that they changed them meant that the characters changed. So I think that's a big part of it.
I agree that like I understand there's some motivation behind it. It's just I'm so brainwashed, I guess, by the original that I'm like, nope, I'm not changing them in my mind. They're still who they are. I'm
that's
sorry.
funny
but
as
There's a
a child.
similarity,
like
right,
you
though,
can
isn't
try
there?
as hard as you want. but
There's
I'm
a
not
similarity, like, I mean, like we
they
talked
look
about.
the same. There's a very similar character
physical,
presence. Although that they obviously don't have the seemingly love they did for Aurora in this one. Their personalities were pretty on point. Like Merriweather, who is not something.
Not grass.
Not grass. is the the stable one. The I'm gonna make the rules, the powerful. And so they reflected pretty well. Wait.
No, Merryweather was the blue.
Merryweather. I'm like, wait, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Merryweather's blue in the beginning, but it was.
Think of Flora.
They were similar.
Yeah.
There was some
But
reflection.
I did like how they in this film they still use magic against each other for the humorous moments.
Yeah.
They were definitely the comic reliefs.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
Also,
other-
another thing that Angelina Jolie specifically requested in this film was Lana Del Rey's version of Once Upon a Time.
Yes,
She was
it
the
was
one
beautiful.
who recommended her, and I think that was incredibly well done. That song is beautiful. I think that Lana Del Rey did an amazing job with it. It makes me want to buy the soundtrack just for that
I
song.
thought it was, you know, I'm not a big Lana Del Rey fan. As far as independent artists go, she was just more or less shoved down my throat. And then the public got to see how she really is on that Saturday Night Live stint. So when I found out that it was Lana Del Rey, I was really shocked and surprised
Me
because
too.
I thought, like, yes, you're right. I mean, that was very well done, and how it came at the end of the
That
movie
song
and
is-
played.
it's
And I
so
think
well
it's her
done.
best
Yeah, I
work.
didn't even
I don't
notice
know if she can get any higher than that.
was it?
It was her
Was
best.
played at the end of the song.
It's
Yeah.
yeah.
A
They
great
played
song
a
in
lot
Great
in the
Gatsby.
trailers
Okay.
and a lot of their marketing. And they take the classic song Once Upon a Time, which is very operatic, like it's sang by, I believe, an opera singer, and very classic, triple it, all the way down. And they really reworked it to make it this dark, moody
Ethereal.
song. Ethereal.
There you go.
You know,
Which it works for Lana Del Rey's voice.
yeah, and it works. I think it works for this version of the
Yes,
movie. I mean, I think
completely.
it really, I think it really captures
And
the essence of this
original,
movie,
and the
yeah.
original really captured the essence of that
Ab-
movie.
oh,
Yeah, and how
absolutely.
they used this one song for the retelling and the original, and it both fit so well.
Perfectly.
I thought that was just beautiful.
the song is almost like a linchpin for each version of the movie. I mean, because you know you can't go to Disneyland and wherever you are hear that song in one way, shape, or form, whether in a restaurant or whatever. And it's so important to the feely goodness of the movie. And then in this one, it does contribute to a feeling towards that movie. And you know, it might take a second or two, but you go, "Wow, I was like, wow, this is really good." So when I stayed and I saw at the end credits, I was like, "That was Lana Del Rey? Damn you, Lana Del Rey,
had
for
the
making
same
me!" I was like,
feeling.
"What?
I had the
Oh,
same feeling of like, I don't really like her.
Yeah.
And then hearing that song being like, oh, I like this song though. I don't like that I like
don't have
it.
these
Yeah.
feelings. I love them.
but I did.
She's
but I did
amazing.
Like that
I
song.
like her too.
Yeah, I don't think she's
I
amazing.
have no memory of it at all.
Were you sleeping at that point?
No,
Were
I
you
saw the
still?
whole thing. I don't know what you guys
Maybe
are talking
you
about.
left
I don't
right at
remember
the
music.
end.
No, I stayed through
It
the whole
played through
thing.
the end.
I don't have any.
Did you leave
not
before
stick.
the end credits?
Nope.
He was just so
Wow.
it just
Did not
identified
stick.
so well
Sorry.
with the movie that he can't understand it's a different
But the music often doesn't stay with
Yeah.
me. so.
Well, you know, this was, you know, another thing that we haven't really talked about too much yet is, you know, production. We've talked about budget. Like
Yeah,
this is Disney's, you know, Disney doesn't have like an animated release this outside of a plain sequel, but they don't have a Pixar movie, a hand drawn movie. So Maleficent is their kickoff for summer. So, you know, and the total budget was $235, and that's for everything.
A lot.
I really
No,
wanna-
that's small. I think that's a small
I just,
budget.
I just want to know where Disney comes up with their budgets
Fine.
because like
That's P&A. and
they make
everything.
so much.
That's P&A and
Yeah.
everything.
Like-
So
What's the budget for the movie though?
It's,
you know what, the production budget,
Yeah.
I couldn't find
I
anywhere.
want to say it was
Wow.
actually.
But-
I want to say it was around 170, but I could be.
That
I
seems
mean, 100
so
That's
small
better.
Well, 100
That's better.
for a movie like
180.
this.
Oh, that is-
I mean, if you got to figure, if it's 235, it was probably the production budget. My guess is
I
just
wanna say
under
it was
200.
I think it was
because
170.
you
That,
got
that,
however
that
much.
number's feeling familiar, but I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
I mean, because you got to figure the print and advertising is at least 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And they've done so,
So-
much for this.
Yeah, I
And
was gonna say
there's
it's
a
even
lot
more
of
than that.
marketing. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say the P&A is even more than that.
Well,
It's been
yeah, well, in
crazy
this
with
one, it
marketing,
could,
at
so that's
least in
why
LA.
like 170
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if that were the production budget, because they did, and Disney needed to. I mean, they really, because again, they don't have they don't have a summer movie like
This
next
is their
year.
tentpole.
Next year is Disney's year. They got Age of Ultron and Star Wars. It's their year. If any other studio thinks that they're going to come in number one, It ain't gonna happen. You know, because not only do they have Star Wars, Ultron, they got a Pixar movie, they got another animated movie coming out. Disney's gonna run the table.
Didn't they have a film that was slated for this year, but they pushed it till next year? So there's something about dinosaur. That was another Pixar
Something
film.
falling? No.
Yeah, I believe they had a film supposed to come out this summer, 2014, but they pushed it to next year.
Yeah, I mean,
so they're gonna have a lot of films next year.
yeah, they're more or less gonna run the table, I think. I mean, so for them, they really did put a lot into Maleficent, you know, and plus they're still reaping in buco bucks from Frozen. I mean, video
Over $1 billion.
overseas. I mean, they're still raking in that in, so you know.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, that's what they're doing, and they just up their ticket prices to the park. So
how I
yeah, that's
feel
all they're
about
doing.
Disney.
Bob Iger's just counting
There you
money.
go. Have fun.
You know, and so when you say $1 million arm, you say, huh? What? And that was a good movie too, but you could see that they probably won't be releasing movies like $1 million arm anytime soon. So, yeah, I mean, and so they had to throw everything they could. They wanted to make this movie work. Fortunately for them, I think they made a good movie.
Yeah, but what is it getting?
Well, you know, they had an opening weekend gross of, let's just say 70. It was $69.4 million.
Is that domestic or worldwide? 'Cause
Domestic.
I know it's the
Domestic.
biggest movie in the world right now, so I think it's doing better internationally than it just is domestically.
Yeah, domestically, it's at last tally was 189 million. Total domestic gross. So the opening weekend was about 69 or 70 million. Total domestic gross, I believe it's passed over 100 million.
Oh, great.
So you know, it's doing really well. It's going to be interesting this week. I mean, I don't want to to date the show, but we have two wide openers. One of them is very heavily female driven.
Yep.
So the question is, as good as Maleficent is, if anybody's been paying attention to Box Office Derby this year, this summer, what's been happening, it's historically starting with like Godzilla.
Yeah.
Movies that have had the #1 slot, their second week drop has been brutal.
But you know what?
So,
For this one that
we'll
I think
see.
is different is I think a point that you brought up is that, and I have had the same feeling of, is this going to be like Snow White and the Huntsman? But people are going to it and they're seeing it and being like, no, this is good.
Yeah, I think so,
I think
too.
the talk about it is doing well, where the talk about Godzilla was bad, you know, all these things where
Word of
people
mouth
were
would be much better.
excited to go into it. People, I think, going into Maleficent were a little excited, but a little like,
Trepidation.
yeah, a little being careful, like, do I want to see this one? And it was great. So I think I think it'll be okay. But with Fault in Our Stars coming out, that's the biggest social media movie ever.
Yeah.
Fandango, it's killing records and ticket sales already. It comes out today. Like, that one's going to be big. And then Edge of Tomorrow is Tom Cruise's big comeback. Like, it's getting great reviews too. So
Yeah, but
It
that's
didn't really
easy.
go
tricky.
away though.
Yeah, I think
I agree.
you know,
I'm a big Tom
Yeah.
Cruise fan too.
Same
well,
here.
you know, I mean, regarding Edge of Tomorrow, I think its biggest battle isn't against Fault in Our Stars.
Exactly.
It's going to be Maleficent, and it's all going to be dependent on what Maleficent drops. You know, when you look at the totals, you know, even if Maleficent drops 60%, that puts it into the 32. If my math is correct, and I suck at math, but if you know, so I mean, Edge of Tomorrow is going to have to do better. Edge of Tomorrow is going to have to be mid-30s, high 30s to even have a shot at being #2. But it all depends on what the female audience goes to this weekend.
See,
And
that's
it's-
the thing, and I
yeah.
think primarily it's going to go to Fault in Our Stars, and I think that the harder part is, I think looking at the advertisements and the marketing for this movie, I'm not sold that a bunch of parents are like, let's take my kids to it.
Exactly.
Which is sad because it's totally kid friendly.
And it's
not
PG.
too scary. It's not like Snow White and the Huntsman and all these things that are definitely too scary for kids because they can take a younger audience to it. It's not
But off
that
the marketing,
scary.
the marketing
No, yeah, you're right.
feels scarier than the actual movie to
Yes.
me.
Yeah.
And like I think that off just the advertisements and all of the Angelina Jolie focus and the the horns, the wings, and her in the shadows, that's giving off the message of this is a scary movie. And I think a lot of parents are like, meh.
Have you noticed
You
they
know what,
changed
though?
it? The trailer is different. They put a new one out with more of the little creatures, more of like the funny little frog-like creatures, which I
I'm
think
not
is
surprised,
because of that.
Because I think
yeah.
the original one, people were like, "What? How scary is this?
Well,
What is it
but
bringing to the
I'm
table?"
just gonna go under the, you know what, you could say it's scary for kids, but it doesn't stop a Harry Potter from making billions.
Exactly.
What is its rating?
I mean, it's PG.
PG.
It's
People
rated
also-
PG.
There
But
was
so
a
they may complain
reaction
about
to
it.
PG-13.
There may be some parents may, but I think ultimately, like the audience that I saw it with, and I went to last Thursday night, it was a lot of kids, like a lot
in
of
the
young
audience
kids.
I went to, there was no kids in the
Yeah, I
audience.
didn't have any kids.
Not a
I
single
had a
one.
bunch of kids in my audience.
Yeah,
I didn't have kids in mine either.
Yeah, I had to, when did you see it?
During-
Midnight.
No, I didn't. I saw it. It was at night, but it wasn't super late. Like
I'm sure
it
I
was
did
like-
see a
school
later
night?
showing.
Mine was the
7:30.
prime time showing, like the 7, 8.
School
I
night?
went to the 8 o'clock one on a Saturday, and
Yeah.
everyone was there.
Yeah, you wanted to say and I
Everyone
went
was there.
Thursday night, but it was like a 7 o'clock show. So yeah, there were a lot more kids than I anticipated. The movie didn't start off like when I first got there, it was a little bit empty. But then, as the trailers or as the advertising stopped, the theater got filled up pretty well. Look, it'll be interesting. Its cinema score rating is an A. Now, its Rotten Tomatoes rating was it's at like 50%.
I'm shocked.
So,
Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars.
Where would you put
and
it?
he's dead. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
50 is a-
I would give it a
50 is
3.
a shock for you. Where would you put it?
Yeah, honestly, I think when it comes to movie making and making a good movie, honestly, I would give it like 95%. I thought it was great.
Well, out of percentage, I'd
Yeah.
give it maybe around 80.
I
80.
agree. I think it's B.
Yeah.
For me, it's a very solid B plus, maybe A minus, but very solid B plus. I mean, it's a movie that I'll more than likely, when it becomes available for pre-order on Blu-ray, I'll get it, add it to my Disney collection.
Well, there you
I
go.
think it was a very like I said, as a retelling. I just
Yeah.
thought it was smarter than the
comparison-
average bear
Oh,
on
I
this one.
So
completely
smart.
Yeah.
So much better than, as you mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that bar
Our
was pretty
past
low.
attempts.
Well, it is no, but you know what though?
Visually,
They
there
could
was
have
some stunning
stayed in
moments
that
in
bar
there.
and still
Yeah.
have made a
No,
ton of
I-
money.
Yeah.
You know, I
Clearly.
mean,
They
they're making a
didn't.
sequel to
Yeah.
Snow White and the Huntsman.
Really?
So yeah.
Wow.
So I mean,
Made
it
its
doesn't.
money.
That doesn't necessarily equate to say quality.
No, it
and
never
again,
does.
regardless of its missteps, and we talked about them here, I still think it managed to still tell a good story with good characters, good characterizations, and make Maleficent something that we never saw before.
Yeah.
So it gave us something we never saw, and to me, that's cool. That was a lot of fun. And Angelina Jolie, was great. There'll more than likely be a sequel at some point. Where they go from there, I have no.
I hope
You know.
not. I think
Yeah, I think there's
This was
going
a
to
very
be.
standalone, I think.
I don't disagree, but
No, but Aurora's she's ruling now.
Yeah, maybe without
She has to be
Maleficent,
happy
it
every
could be.
day.
It's gonna be Aurora against Maleficent.
No, you could do a story without Maleficent, but I think what was so great about this was it wasn't cheap. They did a classic Disney fairy tale. They went back to, not going for cheap laughs, not doing like the Cars thing, which is so cheesy and makes them a lot of money, but it's not great.
you mean Cars 2?
Right.
I'm hoping.
And
Okay.
then planes and all these things that are like cheap little laughs. And it was just great, simple, really like, trimming the fat to make a great film and keeping how short and how long can we make this and tell a story and make it beautiful. And they did it so well that it needs to stand alone. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no,
That's it.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying.
Which is exactly why they'll do a sequel.
Yeah.
Which is exactly.
Right.
And to your point, though, the writer who's had so much experience in, I don't want to demean animated, but it's a short form. Because most animated movies, the Disney ones,
Yeah.
are about 90 minutes.
Yep.
And
they're still wonderful. And they're
absolutely.
So good.
Love
And they tell a story with brevity. They get all the plot points down. And she even admits, when I sit down and write a script, it's a 3-act story to me. And I'm curious to know what fat they may have trimmed, which maybe that'll be
there
on
was
the
a
Blu-ray.
completely different beginning to this.
Okay.
Oh,
I
interesting.
don't know this. Talk more.
I want to say that they ended up cutting like 15 minutes
Good
of
for
the
them.
first
Yeah, good for them.
of the first beginning. There was actually two, we're talking about completely different beginning. There was a king and queen in the Moors, I know that they released the actors that were supposed to play them. I want to say it might have been Vin Patrick Stewart. Anyway, I'd have to re-look it up. But so there was a king and the queen and the Moors, and they were the aunt and uncle of Maleficent. And so there's this whole different reworking of her history, and it wasn't quite so like everyone exists all happy in the Moors. There was a ruler, and Maleficent had a part with them, and I think she was kind of like the despised niece. So they cut a bunch of this out.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It'll be interesting to see if they put it as an extra.
Didn't need it, so.
No, and again, we always talk about editing and trimming.
Yeah, we really haven't talked about this one because it's pretty lean. So.
It's lean. I mean, it again at 90 minutes or 89 minutes. You know, I mean, you know, the trailer reel added on to added onto this runtime, but you're in and out of this movie and. Yeah, there's no fat.
I always think that's nowadays too. That's a brilliant filmmaker. If you can do it in 90 minutes, tell me a story, boom, then like you did it. Because now, you know, after Titanic, I think it set a precedence of like, sure, films can be 3 hours, but you're like, dude, tell me a story in 90 minutes. Like,
well, I'm not Titanic. Go with Gone with the Wind. Go with Spartacus. Go.
No,
I mean, long movies have
now.
always been with us. It's just a question. Listen,
it doesn't matter length. It's just whether
length
or not
doesn't
you tell
matter.
it well. Yeah.
I've seen 90-minute movies that have felt like eternity.
Forever. Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
And I just wanted to
recently.
like.
Yeah, I've seen 3-hour movies where I go, you could show me 4 or 5 more hours, and I'd still be entertained.
Right.
For instance, I can
Just
watch
give me
all
an
of the Lord of
intermission.
the Rings
Pee
in a
break.
row.
Exactly.
No.
I've watched them all in a row.
I mean, I've done that
That's a
too.
full
Actually.
day.
But what I would give with this movie for being so short, it had a lot of humor in it, which I was not expecting for such a dark quote movie.
Yeah.
And I like that because that appealed to me, and their comedic timing was pretty spot on. And like even
it was under. It wasn't much like you were saying. It's not that.
Yeah, it wasn't
simple
cheap
after.
laughs.
Yeah, it was more character.
Exactly, and also just like the little moments are like having Prince Philip float in the air, and even Aurora, and like when you're waking up and then like putting back him to sleep. And
I can hear you.
Stuff like that. I thought there was a lot of good humor in it.
It was well.
But you had other issues then too. Were there other things that you were talking about that you wanted to bring up? Did you, or did we already speak to them all? Did we? All right.
Yeah, I think we did. We
All
did
right.
a
Well,
lot.
look, we've covered it to a great degree. Does anybody have any last thoughts that they want to get into?
No.
Last words?
I mean, I love Imelda Staunton. She's a great actress, and I found it. I was immediately taken aback with her being one of the fairies. I'm like, okay, maybe having them transform into their human self. I was like, okay, I can take her more seriously now, even though she is a kind of a dim-witted kind of person, or like a character in that film. But I did enjoy the fairies, despite how
they were a little
portrayed.
Off-putting in the beginning, though.
They were
with
the face. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, I thought it was so cool.
Oh, and also just a little bit on that. The special effects for the 3 ladies who did it, they used the system called the light stage system. And it's a system, a sphere of computer LED lights that they scan their faces, and they had them sit in a chair and do like all these different facial expressions and pronounce certain consonants so they could see how the face would contort in different lighting situations. So they did that for all the 3 ladies who played the fairies and made them smaller, and this is how their face would contort to.
I do have a question specifically from Marisa, but before that, another cool thing about this movie is that it was released on or around the eve of the 55th anniversary of Sleeping Beauty.
Very cool.
Which is May 30th, 1959, and this one came out June, so it's not, it's within the same week. Also, got to give credit, we talked about the horns. The gentleman who designed the horns is Rick Baker, who's been around forever.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so if you're a horror fan, you would know him from American Werewolf in London. Exactly. If you're a family movie fan, he did Harry and the Hendersons, I believe. I mean, the guy has been around forever. And he still has his chops.
Still cranking it
out. Still working. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
he's a legend. He's a legend when it comes to that sort of
he
thing.
worked closely with Angelina during the whole wardrobe makeup process as well.
So
magnetic horns.
Yeah.
Magnetic horns.
That's smart.
Very smart.
Okay. Well, that's our. Well, go ahead. what you're hearing.
Here we go.
I know, I'm hearing it. That's what I'm saying. Last words.
Yeah,
And
revving it
real
up.
quick, before we get out of here.
But it's the song
Last
that you
thing.
didn't hear.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask Marisa, last week when we were talking about this movie, you're not the biggest Angelina Jolie fan. So going into it,
Way to call her out. Way to call her out.
Well, no, but it's important
I
because
think
did she win you over in this role? Did you still have like how?
I think
what do you
she's a great actress. Yes, I think she brought a lot to Maleficent, especially being an iconic person that we all know, or character that we've all grew up with. She did bring a lot to Maleficent and made me think of Maleficent in a completely different way.
Much like Lana Del Rey in this song.
Yeah,
For me.
it's
For
a
us.
I liked both of them already, so they just continued making me like them both.
I loved Angie, and she just did it for me.
I
Oh, you're
appreciate,
Angie,
after doing
I'm
all the
Angelina.
research, I appreciate how much work Angelina did actually put into this film.
Yeah.
Cool.
And she's been promoting it too, which is fantastic. So
Marissa, let them know where they can find
You
us
can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV and doing a bunch of other stuff here.
and the AOM.
And you can follow all of us on Twitter at Movie Anatomy, and you can check out our website, anatomyofamovie.com.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Chloe West X. Also at American Voice Factor. The website is back up. Thank you guys so much for your patience. All of the websites for AfterBuzz, Anatomy of a Movie, Black Hollywood Live, those are all back up. So thank you guys for your patience on all of that. And check me out on So You Think You Can Dance's after show.
Oh, we're going to meet.
Yes.
I'll be here, Anatomy of a Movie. Also, you can find me at AfterBuzz TV, specifically Game of Thrones, and I'm even maybe doing some fill-ins for Penny Dreadful this week.
Yeah.
yeah, you can find me right here at Anatomy of a Movie. Right back if you're making comments.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Yeah,
And you can't
it's
find me
really fun.
anywhere, but you can find this book, Maria Menounos' The Every Girl Guide to Diet and Fitness, at bookstores and Amazon and anywhere else you can find it. So good, check
Kindle,
that out.
Nook.
Absolutely.
And it's
So-
a book with substance. I mean,
It's a
look
great
at that.
book.
This is like...
Honestly, I would get it in hard copy or
Great
for your
pictures.
iPad because, it reads like a magazine.
Yeah, and I was actually thumbing through it. I want it for the recipes.
Yeah.
Great
Okay.
reviews, too.
All right, on
Yasu.
behalf of everybody here, I want to thank you very much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.
Thanks for watching Anatomy of a Movie on YouTube. For more on your favorite movies, subscribe to our channel here and be sure to let us know what you think in our comment section below here. Bye.